She was a sex worker in Canton Harbor. That is where the story begins. Not in a palace, not in a noble family, not with wealth or education, or any of the advantages that history usually gives its legends. She was born around 1775. Her name, at birth, is lost to history. She would later be known as Zheng Yi Sao, which simply means wife of Zheng Yi. But the name she earned, the name that echoed across the South China Sea, the name that made admirals flinch and emperors sweat, was Ching Shih, and she would become the most powerful pirate who ever lived. Before she commanded a fleet, she had nothing. Before 80,000 sailors answered to her, she was nobody. Before the Chinese Imperial Navy, the Portuguese Empire, and the British East India Company all failed to defeat her, she was a woman in a floating brothel on the Pearl River, in a city that had already decided exactly what she was worth. History does not even record her real name. And yet, she would go on to build the largest pirate confederation in the history of the world. She would control the South China Sea so completely that merchants couldn't sail it without her permission. She would retire undefeated on her own terms, having negotiated a peace agreement so favorable that her enemies essentially begged her to stop. Ask yourself, what kind of person does that? What kind of person starts with nothing? No name, no family, no power, no weapons, and ends up controlling the ocean? That is the question this story tries to answer. The Qing dynasty ruled from Beijing. The empire was vast, one of the largest and most powerful in the world. But at the edges, in the ports and the waterways and the floating villages of the Pearl River Delta, another world existed. A world of fishermen and merchants and pirates and people who had fallen through every gap the empire offered. Canton, now called Guangzhou, was one of the great trading ports of Asia. Ships came from Europe, from Southeast Asia, from across the Pacific. Tea, silk, porcelain, the goods that the Western world desperately wanted, flowed through Canton's harbor. And in that harbor, among the thousands of boats and junks and vessels that crowded the water, were the flower boats, floating brothels, homes and workplaces for women who had no other options. Ching Shih was one of them. She was, by every account that survives, extraordinarily intelligent. She understood people. She understood power. She understood how money moved, and who held it, and what they wanted. Those skills would save her life, and then change history. In 1801, a pirate named Zheng Yi came to Canton Harbor. Zheng Yi was not just any pirate. He was the commander of the Red Flag Fleet, one of the most powerful pirate organizations in southern China. He came from a long line of pirates. His family had sailed these waters for generations. He was powerful. He was feared. And he wanted to marry Ching Shih. Now here is where the story gets interesting. She said yes, but only on her terms. History records, and this is remarkable, that she negotiated the marriage. She demanded an equal share of his fleet, his profits, and his command. She demanded a voice in decisions. She demanded partnership, not ownership. Zheng Yi agreed. Think about that for a moment. A woman with no family name, no social standing, no weapons, and no army, sat across from one of the most dangerous pirates on the South China Sea and negotiated her own terms. And he agreed, because he saw what she was. Together, they built the Red Flag Fleet into something that had never existed before. They unified the competing pirate clans of the Pearl River Delta under one confederation. They created rules, a code of conduct, a system of taxation for merchants who used their waters. By 1804, the Red Flag Fleet had grown to hundreds of ships. Ching Shih had helped build it. She understood every part of it. She was learning everything she would need. In 1807, Zheng Yi died. The exact circumstances are debated. Some records say he drowned in a typhoon. Others suggest other causes. What is not debated is the result. The Red Flag Fleet, 800 ships, 80,000 sailors, the most powerful pirate confederation in the world, suddenly had no leader. And every man in that fleet was watching to see who would step forward, watching to see who had the strength to hold it together. The obvious choice, to many of the pirates, was a man named Zhang Bao, Zheng Yi's adopted son, and one of the most capable fighters in the fleet. Ching Shih had another idea. She moved immediately. She went to the fleet commanders one by one and made her case. She reminded them of the code they had built together. She reminded them of the profits they had earned under unified command. She reminded them what chaos would cost them. She brought Zhang Bao to her side, and then married him. Not out of love, necessarily. Out of strategy. By keeping Zhang Bao close, by making him her partner in command, she neutralized the most likely challenge to her authority. It was a move of breathtaking political intelligence. Within weeks of Zheng Yi's death, Ching Shih was in command of the Red Flag Fleet, not as a widow being protected, as the commander, as the leader, as the most powerful person on the South China Sea. She did not rule through fear alone. That is one of the things that makes Ching Shih remarkable in the history of pirates and in the history of command generally. She ruled through law. She created a code for the Red Flag Fleet, a set of rules that governed how the Confederation operated. And the rules were enforced. If a pirate stole from the fleet's communal fund, he was beheaded. If a pirate disobeyed orders, he was flogged or had his ears cut off. If a pirate took a female captive against her will, he was put to death. If a pirate took a female captive and a relationship developed by mutual agreement, he was responsible for her. She became his wife. He was accountable for her well-being. These were not soft rules. They were enforced with absolute consistency. And the fleet responded. Because pirates, like any organization, function better with structure, with predictability, with a sense that the rules apply to everyone. Ching Shih understood something that took many rulers' lifetimes to learn. Power without law is just violence. Law without power is just words. The combination of both, consistently applied, is authority. She had authority. By 1808, the Chinese imperial government had had enough. The Red Flag Fleet was not just stealing. It was controlling. Merchants had to pay for safe passage. Coastal villages were paying tribute. The sea lanes that China depended on for trade were effectively under private management. The emperor sent a fleet to deal with it. The Imperial Navy attacked the Red Flag Fleet in 1808. Ching Shih destroyed them, not defeated them, not repelled them, destroyed them. Dozens of imperial ships were captured or sunk. Hundreds of imperial sailors were taken prisoner. The emperor tried again. And again. He enlisted the help of the Portuguese. Portugal had a naval presence in the region and was losing money to the fleet's control of trade routes. The Portuguese sent warships. Ching Shih defeated them too. He turned to the British East India Company, one of the most powerful military commercial organizations in the world. Same result. By 1809, the Red Flag Fleet had fought off the combined military forces of the Chinese Empire, the Portuguese Navy, and the British East India Company, and had not been defeated. The world was running out of options for dealing with her. There was one battle in particular, the Battle of the Tiger's Mouth in January 1809, where imperial forces attempted a massive coordinated assault. Ching Shih's fleet maneuvered in ways the imperial commanders did not expect. The attack failed completely. She was undefeated, and everyone knew it. Here is where Ching Shih made the move that separated her from every pirate who came before. She chose her moment. By 1810, the Red Flag Fleet was under growing pressure. Not military pressure, she had answered that, but internal pressure. Keeping 80,000 people fed, paid, motivated, and unified was an enormous challenge. Supply lines were being disrupted. Some sub-commanders were growing restless. And she was watching the political situation change. The Chinese government had shifted tactics. Instead of trying to destroy the fleet outright, they were offering amnesty to pirates willing to surrender. Other pirate leaders were taking the deal. Ching Shih read the moment. She opened negotiations. She did not negotiate from weakness. She negotiated from a position of absolute strength. As a commander who had never been defeated, whose fleet remained the most powerful on the sea. Her terms were extraordinary. Her sailors would be pardoned. They would keep most of their stolen wealth. Many of them would be absorbed into the imperial military, with rank. Zhang Bao, her husband and second in command, was given an official military position. And Ching Shih herself, she retired, with her wealth, with her freedom, with her life. She was 35 years old. The woman who had been born with no name in a floating brothel on the Pearl River walked away from the largest pirate fleet in history on her own terms, wealthier, freer, and more powerful than most of the people who had tried to stop her. She opened a gambling house in Canton. She lived well into old age. She died in 1844, around the age of 69, undefeated, unconquered, unchained. History did not always know what to do with Ching Shih. For a long time, Western histories barely mentioned her. Chinese official records treated her as a criminal footnote, a problem that had been managed, rather than a leader who had never been beaten. It took historians in the 20th century, particularly scholars like Diane Murray, whose 1987 book, Pirates of the South China Coast, brought serious academic attention to the Red Flag Fleet, to begin telling her story with the weight it deserved. And slowly, the world caught up. Today, Ching Shih is recognized as one of the most extraordinary military commanders in human history. Not the most extraordinary female commander. The most extraordinary, full stop. She controlled more ships than any pirate in recorded history. She maintained an organization of 80,000 people across years of active warfare. She defeated the combined naval forces of 3 major powers. She retired on her own terms with her wealth and freedom intact. No pirate, male or female, Eastern or Western, ancient or modern, ever built what she built or left it the way she left it. Legend and history, for once, agree. She was real, and she was incredible.